Hi.
Hi.
Again, I'm just checking my sound.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. Jen, for the Western cancellation, it's
Hmm.
just an informational thing, right? There's really no
Yeah.
discussion.
Unless anybody wants to discuss, but it's just basically, I guess it was a 1 year and it just quietly did not get renewed again. Doesn't mean to say that it won't come up again in future, but my understanding is it just wasn't renewed this year.
Steve, did you want to speak to that when I bring it on up on the agenda, or just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I could just echo what Jen said. It wasn't so much a cancellation. It's my understanding it's just a renewal or just a lack of a desire to renew it at this point in time. So it could pop up again next year.
Okay,
But I can't really speak to their reasons.
okay. All right, we'll get started in approximately 1 minute. Just a prompt for all our board members to turn on their video. Ms. Foster, we did expect that the mayor might be slightly late due to the briefing. Did I understand that correctly? No, he should be joining. Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started then. We'll call the meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. I thank everyone for joining us. Thank all the media that are here, as well as anybody else who's signed in. Just a reminder, logistically, that I'll ask all attendees to stay on mute unless they are asked to speak. And also a note that this meeting will be posted to YouTube by tomorrow afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to share a few updates on behalf of the board. The board has engaged in some internal reforms to address how we conduct our meetings, as well as establishing some subcommittees to do a deep dive into certain areas of our core business. This new board format has started today, and that has included the merging of our in-camera and board member only meetings, as well as the public portion of committee meetings. Due to these changes, our timings may change in the future. We will keep the public updated on any such decisions. We also had our first governance meeting this past Tuesday, chaired by Vice Chair Toth. I'd also like to take a moment to commemorate on behalf of the board the Canadian Police and Peace Officers Memorial Service. The 43rd annual memorial service was held virtually, although the community was unable to gather in person. Everyone came together on Sunday, September 27th, and commemorated those that we had lost. In addition, the board's work on anti-racism continues, and we will update the community on this further in our agenda. We will be continuing virtual meetings into the foreseeable future due to the effects and the conditions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd also like to take a few moments to remind our community to stay cautious, to stay safe, and to look out for one another as we head into what will undoubtedly be a challenging winter, both for the physical and mental health of our community. With those comments stated, I will call for any disclosures of interest from board members. All right. With none stated, we're going to move forward with the introduction of addendum and new business items. We have three items to add to our agenda. The first is a verbal update on our work on anti-racism. The second is update on an assessment growth proposal. And the third is an update on an SIU investigation. Can I get a motion to add those items to the agenda? Moved by Mr. Lang, seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor? Carried. Item 4, minutes of the September 17th Public London Police Services Board meeting. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes? With none, can I get a motion to approve? Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor? Carried. Item 5, board meeting and conference schedule for 2021. As you will see, we have proposed meeting and conference schedule. We are assuming that there will be very few in-person gatherings and that many of these events will be virtual, but the dates are noted for the attention of the board. Any questions or comments on that schedule? If none, can I get a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Lang, seconded by Councillor Helmer. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Moving right along, we'll go to item 6. This is a mandatory board report on collection, preservation, and control of evidence and property. And I will turn the floor over to Deputy Chief Betts.
So you want to get these in your turn? Thank you, Chair. And through you, this is, as you say, an annual report that comes to the board detailing the disposal of property under sections 132, 133, and 134 of the Police Services Act. As you'll see before you, section 132 speaks to the reporting requirements related to seized and or found personal property except currency and firearms. The detailed of information with regard to what has been disposed of has been provided to you in the board report. And just for your awareness, we did see a reduction in the number of items that were able to be returned to owners during this particular period over the last few months as the pandemic has restricted access. However, we have been in contact with property owners with regard to that. Section 133 of the Police Services Act requires us to report on the disposal of found and seized currency. And during this reporting period is where you have the bulk of the funds that have been turned over to the board. Approximately $15,322 in Canadian currency and $93 in US dollars. And then section 134 of the Police Services Act speaks to disposition of found and seized firearms. During this reporting period, this one calendar year, it's mentioned 550 firearms were seized and or found by London police officers. 118 of those were returned to lawful owners, leaving the rest to be destroyed under police supervision. The result of the currency and the income generated as a result of the auction of property that was unable to be returned to owners was a deposit to the board of $24,356.33. Therefore, this report is being provided to you for your information. Further details are attached in the addendum to the board report. Subject to any questions, that's my report.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Betts. We'll open it up if there are any questions from the board. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Deputy Chief Betts. when I see specifically the part about the firearms, so I heard your verbal report and you said the rest were destroyed, but in the paper copy or the digital copy, it says that it gives a number there: 269 firearms destroyed, 118 returned to the owner, and so it doesn't seem to add up to that 519 number.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that to my attention so I could clarify. Firearms that aren't destroyed or returned will be retained as probably evidence in relation to an investigation or a matter before the courts.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for that.
Vice Chair.
Just curious in terms of the numbers, is this an average? It's usually around 500-ish per year. Is this higher? Is it lower?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's a fairly consistent number. We do track the number of handguns versus long guns and things of that nature. Interestingly, the vast majority of what we seized here in this past reporting period were 180 airsoft BB guns or pellet guns. So things that may have been held out to be a firearm during the commission of an offense or seized in relation to that, but turned out not to be a firearm by the definition of the criminal code.
Any additional questions? Right, if there are none, can I get a motion that the board receives for informational purposes the collection, preservation, and control of evidence and property mandatory board report? Moved by Mr. Lang, seconded by Councillor Helmer. All in favor? Carried. Moving along, we've got item 7. This is the Professional Standards Branch third quarter complaints against police statistics. And I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair, to the board through you. Before you is the third quarter report looking at all of the complaints that we receive either through the OIPRD or that are generated as a local discussion, meaning a member of the public comes in to make a complaint or file a complaint about an officer they're dealing with, or chief's complaints, investigations that we order in-house because of some knowledge we have. We look at this report always as a 5-year trend, and I know this is quarterly, so you keep seeing this one, but I'll just explain it for the public. A 5-year trend. When I look at the report, I don't see anything that jumps off the page that I would find concerning, although I do see a slight elevation in the number of complaints we receive. Sometimes that is strictly about education to the public. Anytime a member of the public comes in, we are obligated to share with them how to file a complaint to the OIPRD. We will also generate complaints as needed in-house should we need to do that. So you'll see a slight elevation, nothing that's concerning. I draw your attention just to the glossary at the back because I appreciate that some of the terminology is confusing and convoluted. So I bring for the public's attention just that glossary at the back to help you kind of follow through this report. But I would ask that the board receive this report, and I would love to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for the report and for the presentation. Are there any questions from members of the board? Great. There are none. I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Helmer, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next item is item 8, and this is another quarterly report on Crime Stoppers in Pursuit to Statistics. Deputy Chief McIntyre.
Thank you again, Chair, through you to the board. These are the third quarter stats for both Crime Stoppers activity And for pursuits, the Crime Stoppers report, I always think is fairly self-explanatory. So you'll just see the dollar amounts of property seized, et cetera there. So I'll just skip over to the pursuit report because this sometimes for the public can be confusing as well. Again, we get into police jargon. So I just direct your attention to the back page. We've expanded this again to try to give you some definitions and some clarity around what you're looking at. When you look at the pursuit report, again, it is trended. So you'll see in a moment of time, where do we sit relative to other years? There's nothing here that I find concerning. The total number of pursuits year to date, you'll see it at the bottom there is 6. And you'll see the corresponding 5-year trend. But I'm open to any questions you may have. And my recommendation is that the board receive this report.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Are there any questions from board members in relation to this quarterly report? None. I'll ask if you get a motion to receive. Moved by the mayor, seconded by Mr. Lang. All in favor? Carried. All right. Item 9. This item refers to Western University's cancellation of the information sharing agreement. This is just advising the board that Western University has opted not to renew their information sharing agreement with the Police Services Board. This previous agreement was approved August 2019 for a 1-year term. This is an informational item, but if there's any questions, we can direct them to the chief. Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Chief, I just saw this mentioned in the news. Did Western reach out directly to us to let us know, or I'm just trying to understand how the information flowed in terms of this happening, this decision.
Thank you. Yeah, so they did reach out recently to indicate that because first off, this project or this program was a pilot started, and because COVID and the COVID response by Western was a critical priority for them, they've basically hit pause on the assessment of the pilot. So they waited a while until making that decision, not knowing how COVID was going to go. So it could rear its head again next year, but we were aware this was coming.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments or questions? Can I get a motion to receive this update for informational purposes? Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor? Carried. Item 10. This item refers to public correspondence that we transparently make public so that the community is aware. Specific items to note include a note of thanks regarding our Peace Yippee Scholarship, response to the CCLA, BLAC, and HALCO regarding the COVID database, email to the International Privacy Commissioner, and an All Chiefs memo. Can I get a motion to receive public correspondence? Moved by Ms. Wellenreiter, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Great. New business. All right, so first item of new business today is a verbal update on the board's work on AT racism. Wanted to update the board that we were very happy to see a high level of engagement from our community in response to the public engagement survey that we put out many weeks ago. We had over 1,100 responses. So I want to personally thank each and every one of you that took time to engage with us, to respond, and to share your feedback. Although we received hundreds and hundreds of pages, we have gone through those diligently and thoroughly to make sure that every word was heard, understood, and can be used in a constructive way towards our efforts. What we heard from the community was essentially that as far as the priority areas that were identified by the board at its June 18th meeting, these priority areas were generally perceived as equal importance. None of them were perceived as more important than the other. There was general support from the community for the directions in which the board has moved. And there were some very helpful and constructive comments, specifically regarding the advisory committees that the board was proposing. For example, we had some very helpful comments about ensuring that there's inclusive representation on these committees and ensuring that the work of these committees be conducted in as transparent and open a manner as possible. In addition, we received some helpful feedback around community and public engagement. It's clear that there are certain areas where the public is hoping to get a better understanding of both what the board does, what the service does, and where some of those boundaries and distinctions might be. And we know that we're working very closely and in lockstep with our chief and senior administration on making sure that those questions and concerns get answered and addressed with the public. Our plans will be to take this feedback from the survey that closed about 2 weeks ago to our new governance committee, which will fine-tune the terms of reference and move us towards passing these terms of reference, at which point we may begin recruiting for this committee. So be on the lookout for that, because we are going to be looking for members of the public to be a part of these initiatives as we co-design some of this work together. With that, I'll pause my verbal update and take any questions or comments on the topic. Right. Well, then I'll take a motion to receive the update. Moved by Councillor Helmer, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Thank you. Our next new business item relates to assessment growth positions, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Betts.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I will present here in the public session the report with regard to our ask of the city for assessment growth funding to fund the addition of 11 new members to the London Police Service in 2021. All but 2 of those members are non-sworn positions, and I can say as well in that the city was tremendously helpful in guiding the London Police Service through this process in terms of the requirements to meet this need. And so I'd like to just acknowledge their assistance with that. So we will be asking for 2 frontline sergeants. These sergeants will help to support the frontline in terms of growth that we've seen in the city. We have added additional constables to the front line to manage growth. However, we have not added additional levels of supervision since 2016. These positions are also going to assist us with a restructuring internally to help manage growth, not just with population, but also in terms of workload associated to the growth of the population we come in contact with in our custody. And that will be revisited elsewhere with some other positions. Next, we'll be asking for 2 911 communication operators. We had approved for 2 in 2020. We have asked again for 2 additional in 2021. This is part of a known understaffing within this particular location. We know that overtime is high in the 911 communication center, as is sick time as a result of the staffing. Industry standards suggest we are still below staffing with the addition of these members. However, with efficiencies we've been able to manage, we believe these 2 members are all that we would be seeking in 2021. I'd also point out that we have seen an increase in workload in that area in terms of calls into the call center, and we expect additional workload in relation to the introduction of NG 911, which continues to loom on the horizon. Next, we'll be asking for 1 systems analyst, and this will support the IT side and the support positions here within the organization. As the frontline and grows, so too do the demands on the support to the frontline. Everything we do is digital, everything we do is electronic, and everything we do requires support behind the scenes. So as the population grows, as I say, so too does our staffing to address the workload, and so too does the workload on the support. There is a nexus between that. In addition to that, we also have workload pressures associated to court requirements in terms of disclosure, timelines, and new forms of dealing extrajudicially with matters that come before the courts. For example, the introduction of the new Justice Centre here in the City of London. So that position will help to support that. With regard to the next position is a financial analyst. And not surprisingly, as we continue to add staff, there is an increasing pressure on the organization to be able to support that on the financial side of the organization. We had last seen an increase in complement in 2018 by 1, but before that, not since 2006. We also recognize that there are additional demands of workload on this particular area of the organization, some of which are required by the city in terms of asset management. And of course, we have procurement processes and additional pressures. We have seen an increase in workload in that area as the staffing changes to meet the demands in the community. We will be seeking 4 court services administrative assistants. These administrative assistants will be required as part of our overall risk mitigation strategy, not just for our members, but also for the members of the public. We are, as I mentioned, coming into a restructuring in how we manage prisoner care and control. We've seen an increase in the types of health and mental health related instances involving people that we continually come in contact with, which requires a greater care of service. That care of service currently is undertaken by our police cadets, who are also tasked with creating charge packages to bring people before the courts. Both of those tasks are highly demanding, and as the workload increases, so too do the demands for each of those areas of the organization. What these 4 assistants will allow us to do is to split that work and push some of that into a dedicated and professional group of individuals whose sole job will be to manage the charge packages, leaving our other staff to have a sole job of monitoring prisoner well-being while they're in our custody. And finally, geographic information systems. We are seeking 1 person. That will be a new person to this organization. As demand has continued to grow in the community, we continue to see an increasing demand and requirement to be able to geospatially represent crime in a visual manner that allows us to ensure our officers in the right place, the right time, with the right information to do the right things. We have seen this demand increase as population increases, workload increases on the street as a result. Some of the more recent trends that we've seen in relation to crimes in certain types that have escalated during this current pandemic, and the need to be able to map that out, to be able to identify patterns, what's happening, where it's happening, and when it's happening. And this has been an increase in workload as well as the population continues to increase, and this will help us to address that issue. There are funding of implications, of course, associated to this, and those will be in the amount of $1.355 million, and that's for operating costs with a $170,000 capital cost implication for a total of $1.526 million in relation to assessment growth funding. And I will note that that is within the expected limits of what was provided to us by the city. Subject to any questions, it's my recommendation that the board receive this for their information and authorize us to provide this assessment request to the city as part of their process.
Deputy Chief, we'll open it up to any questions from board members. Comments? Councillor Helmer.
Thanks. I'll move the recommendation from Deputy Chief Betts, and it seems to me that the positions are well justified by being growth related, and glad that the conversations with the city have been productive up to this point. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Helmer. So just to clarify the language, you're moving that the board approves the 11 additions to complement noted as assessment growth positions and authorize the administration to present them to the city treasurer. Is that correct?
Yep.
Thank you. A seconder, is that Mr. Lang for a seconder or for comment? Seconder?
I'll second, thanks.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we are moving along in record time. So we'll move to Deputy Chief McIntyre in regards to an SIU report.
Thank you, Chair, through you. The attached report on an SIU investigation obviously comes legislatively. All of these reports, to the public, are all posted on the SIU website. And I just share that with you because obviously they expand on some of the detail that you don't see in my report because they are the investigation. I just share that with the public every time. If you allow me to walk through this report for you, I can explain kind of what happened. So the report before you looks at the SIU investigation and also the findings of an internal investigation that, again, were legislated to perform after. That following investigation, excuse me, looks at LPS procedures, our services, and then the conduct of our members involved in that call. So this occurrence is tragic. It is a death occurrence. On May the 5th, officers were called to a high-rise apartment building for a mom who calls worried about her son's mental health. The officers are able to get up to the 15th floor, but not able to enter his apartment because the door had been barricaded. Officers do, though, very briefly speak to the gentleman on the phone. Officers outside the apartment building on the ground witness this individual sitting on the balcony, had his legs hanging over the side, and then the male starts to climb down the exterior of the building from the 15th floor. He's successful for several floors, but then eventually falls. 3 days later, the man dies as a result of his injuries. So right away when that happens, the SIU is called. They invoke their mandate. They attend and investigate that thoroughly. We, as the London Police Service, cannot investigate, nor can we interfere. The SIU bring in all of their own investigative team, their own ident resources, etc., and they go through that methodically. Once they are done, we are notified then to complete our parallel to that investigation in-house. And this is, again, looking at our officers' conduct, our procedures, and the services that day. So the director, who is of the SIU, reviewed all of the findings and determined that the officers involved that day did nothing criminal. There was no criminal wrongdoing by our officers. So then we are allowed to internally look at procedures and the conduct of officers. Our report yielded that there was no misconduct of our officers on that day in question. Although tragic, I just bring that kind of synopsis to your attention and just really to provide transparency for the public because it was an awful case. But my recommendation to the board is that you receive this report, and I'm open to any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Are there any questions or comments from board members on this report? All right. If there are none, then can I get a motion to receive? Moved by the mayor, seconded by Ms. Wellenreiter. All in favor? Carried. All right. There are no other noted items on today's agenda, and our next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 19th. At this point, I'd just also like to thank everybody who's listening, and if there are media requests, please contact us. We can be available subsequent to this meeting. This time I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Lang, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming out listening. Thank you to board members, and we will see you in November. Take care, everyone.